Are you trying to establish your brand as a thought leader? Start a podcast, invite industry experts to be guests on your show, and watch your brand become the prime resource for decision makers in your industry. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I am joined again today by Sangram Vajre. He's the Chief Evangelist and Co-Founder at Terminus. Sangram, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. You couldn't get rid of me after the last podcast episode, so we're here again.
Awesome, man. It is definitely not on my list to try and get rid of you. I am cherishing every moment to get to chat with you. Your positivity, your energy, and your thoughts on marketing are always a welcome addition to any conversation that I'm a part of. So for folks who aren't familiar with you, I definitely suggest they go back, check out our episode yesterday on Friday. We were chatting with Sangram about this controversial topic of marketing being a function of sales. Today, we're going to get a little bit more tactical, and I'd like to just jump straight into this idea, Sangram. If you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about why you should be measuring your funnel differently with an ABM approach versus an inbound or completely demand gen, wide funnel down to the bottom approach.
Well, that's a really, really good question, Logan. And I feel like the answer to that is really rooted into what matters to you. And to your company, to your customers. So I'll share an example of Snowflake, which is one of our great, awesome customers. We had them come to the office pretty recently and kind of share their journey where they went from what I will say status quo kind of marketing to ABM 1.0, where I think majority of the people are, to almost ABM 2.0, where what they do is they're running 500 or so one-to-one campaigns. Now, let me explain what that means. They're literally running one-to-one campaign, which means there's one ad that takes them to one landing page for one account, that they create videos for that one particular person or a set of people, different individual videos. There's one direct mail that goes to that particular account. There's one event that they're planning around that account. So if you could just see the level of depth and details they really think about when they say one-to-one campaigns, and they're running 500 of them, and they want to get to 1,000 by the end of Q1.
Wow!
So just that's the surface level, and they have about 6 ABM people in their company, and they're going to hire and get to 15 by the end of Q1. So that's with them doing what I would consider ABM 1.0. I'll pause there if you had any thoughts there before I jump into ABM 2.0.
Holy cow. I mean, I think that's well beyond ABM 1.0 for a lot of folks. I mean, the amount of effort it takes to do 500 one-to-one campaigns, is that something that you guys are seeing with a lot of customers that are at this level, or are they somewhat of an anomaly with the approach that they've taken at Snowflake?
Well, they definitely more are on the futuristic stage. I would say they're the early adopters of ABM. They have been with Terminus for about 2 years, but really on this journey for about 2.5 years. They have transformed their organization. They're one of the fastest growing company, faster than Salesforce was, and they by the end of next year or something, they're going to hit $1 billion. So they are in revenue. So they are moving. So growth is really what drives them, and the way they're looking at growth is by doing this level of ABM. Mm-hmm. And if you thought that was like way ahead, hear this. their ABM 2.0, where I feel like the measurement really come to play, is what they are now setting up their field marketing teams and events. So what they're really helping their sales team is figure out based on this criteria of fit, intent, and engagement. So based on fit, intent, and engagement, they're able to figure out, let's say they want to open up an office in Boston. They would literally look at it and say, okay, in Boston, we can close about, we have about 100 accounts that we could sell based on our ideal customer profile. Based on that, we should be hiring no more than one sales rep because that's how much they would close. So, and based on what we can do at the one-to-one level, here is our ability to close in Boston region. So here's the quota that we should have for the Boston rep. So literally, they're helping figure out the quotas in their own organization based on all this data they have around fit, intent, and engagement. So when we think about analytics and metrics and the ability to look at it, they're not looking at leads. They're not incented by number of people attending a webinar. They're not looking at website traffic and seeing how many people are coming to the website. It's exactly the opposite. And I think that's what is going to take tremendous amount of growth in the mindset for people, is that you're going to measure different things, the things that you haven't seen or measured for the last 10, 15 years if you have been in marketing. If you're measuring website, you're going to measure, are the right people from the right accounts or spending time on your website? If you're measuring webinars, you're going to look at, are the right people in the right tier of your account spending time on your webinar? If you're measuring downloads, you're going to look at, are the right people downloading and how much time have they spent on, by looking at like Uber Flip or whatever, if they're using some of the content streams, how much time have they really spent on it? So I think the measurement, Logan, is going to be shifting so tremendously from volume based, yay, whoa, we just had 100 people download an ebook, to like, oh, we have the top 5 accounts engage with our content, right? People get excited about that. And I think that's the big change that they're doing as part of their 2.0 journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it also makes sense that you need to measure ABM differently because the top of the funnel is static, right? I mean, if we just think about an ABM approach, even backing up a second from the details of the way one customer is using it, which I think is a phenomenal story, and it reiterates some of the data value that comes to marketing by seeing themselves as a function of sales like we were talking about yesterday. So if anybody didn't catch that, I would definitely recommend going back and listening there because we're unpacking it even more here today, which I love. But let's just touch on that for a bit, Sangram, because that's another reason why you've got to measure differently is because the funnel is different. It's flipped. The top is static, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, that is, you use the optimal word there, which we can double click on, which is most people doing ABM are actually in this category where I call the static category, right? Which means, all right, we're going to identify our top 100 accounts to go after, sales, marketing, let's just figure out, let's just measure, let's get proactive around it, and let's just focus on these top 100 accounts. But what that does is it definitely galvanizes everybody around the same pot. So it should have better results than any other traditional disconnected marketing you might have done before, disconnected marketing sales. But really, if you're moving to this ABM2 approach, which almost the way I think about it is going from good to great, is actually going from a static, which is focused on the top 100 accounts, you're going after, how do I run it dynamic, which means I want to have an always on campaign, but not in the way we did before, not by just sending nurture emails in an automated way that goes to people. You don't care who opened or clicked. No, not that. It is still based on the fact that as soon as any of the accounts that you care about shows interest, which is defined by intent, by all these different data providers that you can figure out on your website or externally, you are launching a play automatically. So, for instance, you're not only focused on the top 100 accounts that you want to go after. You're now focusing on the accounts that have fit, that have intent, that is just popped up somewhere else. And now you're automatically, experientially creating that experience for them that you already have created and are just waiting to launch. So automatically imagine an ad is getting created, a landing page is getting created, a stream is getting created, and the campaign is just launched, or direct mail is happening all of these things are now happening instead of a person just doing all these things. Imagine dynamically just happening. And I think that's where we're going from this kind of static, kind of approach of good marketing to dynamic, experiential approach of prioritized reach.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I love that, Sangram. So can you speak tactically to maybe some of the things you see companies like Snowflake doing to set up their infrastructure to measure differently? Because we've talked about, target, engage, the different steps that someone goes through and what you're measuring on your sales and marketing scorecard with an ABM approach. What are some of the things folks need to be thinking about as they start to shift their strategy and therefore need to shift the operations on the back end very tangibly to how they measure and how they look at their funnel and stages and those sorts of things in their tech stack? Can you speak to how people have kind of made that shift at a granular level, some of the things they found and hurdles they've overcome?
Yeah, totally, man. I think there's so many hurdles, right? And I will use again another example. This time, let's just use Thomson Reuters. Again, a big organization, not just they use Terminus, but they just are, I feel, one of the pioneers. And now this is an enterprise company, so they have even more hurdles to think about. It's not a high growth startup company. They are obviously growing, but it's a big mega enterprise companies. They focus the entirety of the function that they're focusing on are about 250 accounts. That's it. And that's all they're focusing on. And even those 250 accounts, they have split into tier 1, which are strategic, about 175 of them. Quick, tier 2, which they call quick wins, which they have a renewal risk and our medium acquisition opportunities. So that's tier 2. And tier 3, which they call always on, which is the top 500 firms in their marketplace, including some of the tier 1, tier 2, and that's about 75. So they really pull these accounts together and are launching different plays. So I think the number one thing, if I would recommend anybody just seeing so many companies fail and stand up again, is this. Number one, figure out the right accounts and have those accounts very clearly identified, agreed upon, discussed between sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. I cannot implore on that point enough, because without the right accounts, it really, really doesn't work, because nobody's going to follow up. If there's not follow up, then activity, all of this just goes down the drain. So figuring out the right accounts. So that's step number 1. Number 2, tactically, just figure out which accounts fall in which tier, which means you have to agree on, I'm going to do a whole lot more with this one account where we're going to do landing pages, we're going to do this one-to-one ad, we're going to do some events, we're going to do all kinds of stuff. And with other accounts, we're not going to do that. We're going to run just digital campaigns, or we're just going to run email campaigns. You have to figure out which accounts you're okay, not jumping in all in. And then finally, maybe the third and maybe the most important thing is going beyond the acquisition funnel and looking at maybe your pipeline velocity accounts that your sales team desperately are trying to close, or your upsell or cross-sell, which I like to call upsell, and focusing on those accounts and saying, okay, they already know about us. How do I engage them even further? And using the same exact play that you might do in acquisition, but on accounts that your sales team is already engaged on, or renewals where your customer success team is focusing on. Those are early quick wins that I feel very few companies are taking advantage of.
Yeah, that totally reiterates two of the things you hit on there. Reiterate a few things that Lauren Vaccarello touched on earlier in the week, Sangram, is that you need to have sales and marketing both be involved in the account selection, because there's going to be some of that gut feel from sales, and there's going to be a lot of data from marketing as they look at intent and other forms of data that can help determine the best fit accounts and the timing of running those plays. And then also, I love what you're saying, Sangram, about which accounts at which tier, because Lauren also touched on, if you are trying to make the shift to ABM 1.0 or even, 0.5, if you're not to where Snowflake is today, you need to be able to establish some quick wins. So I love what you're saying there about tiering out accounts, not only from just looking at, hey, these are our, ideal top 100, top 175, but where are the quick wins where we can shift to an ABM approach and show some some early victories in the process. I think that is very, very tactically valuable for a lot of folks looking to make the shift right now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think start with the right target accounts, get that alignment going way before, and just figure out who you're going to give more attention to, so everybody feels like they totally get where it's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sangram, this has been another great conversation. Thank you for joining me for back-to-back episodes today. Again, if anybody didn't hear my conversation with Sangram yesterday, definitely go back and check that out. I love the topic that he unpacked for us yesterday as well. Sangram, if anybody listening to this has not yet connected with you, I highly encourage them to do so. LinkedIn's still the best way to find you, man.
Man, LinkedIn would be a great way to just connect and just join the conversation.
Yep, absolutely. Get some more positivity in your feed and follow Sangram. Connect with him. I can't encourage listeners enough. Well, Sangram, this has been great, man. Thank you so much for being on the show yet again.
Thank you so much.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.